change the world.
On we go.
Hello, wonderful bookish family. Welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name's Steph, and I have for you here today a speed drawing video in which I am drawing a custom bookmark, as I do whenever I enjoy a book, for The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This video is a long overdue video because I read this book back in January of 2021, and I have this kind of problem where when I love a book so much, I just need to sit on it, and sometimes that can be days, sometimes that can be weeks, or sometimes that can be months, and it seems to kind of match up with, depending on how much more I love the book, the longer it takes for me to talk about it, because I just want to sit and scream that I love it all day incoherently. But I finally gotten to a point where I feel like I have enough conscious, coherent thoughts that will make sense more than just screaming my love for Becky Chambers from the top of the roof. So if you like this kind of content, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you can get a notification every time I post a speed drawing bookmark review. So, what is this book about? Before I get started, I will say that I will do my best to keep this as a spoiler-free review, and it has to be mentioned the backstory as to how Becky Chambers came to writing The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, because my hat is off to her. She's basically living my dream. So as far as I am aware, that this was first a self-published book that Becky Chambers put up on Kickstarter and was able to get enough funding to publish this herself, and later on was picked up by a much larger publisher. But it has won so many awards since then, and she basically quit her job to go and live her dream writing and being a creative person full time. And that is my dream. One day I will be an artist full time. But Becky Chambers, you're living my dream. That being said, we are technically, and I say technically because this is very much a character-driven book, following a team of wormhole-punching astronauts on a ship called the Wayfarer. And it begins with a archivist named Rosemary, who is technically a Martian or from the planet Mars, who is taking a job on this ship, and we meet a whole cast of characters here. Most of our crew members are human in origin, but we also have a few other crew members who are human but not from Earth or from Mars, or crew members who are just not from the same solar system, which is fantastic. We're very quickly introduced to many different alien species throughout this series. And it's really wonderful because there's so much social commentary throughout this entire 4 books in these series. And it begins very strongly in this first book with really putting into perspective what is the definition of what it means to be human, and why do we put everything into this kind of anthropocentric lens when we are not the only species that inhabit this universe. So essentially the Wayfarer is tasked with this mission of going to another galaxy in which there is another alien species called the Quailin, and they're a very confrontational species, and there's an entire history, which you will learn throughout the series, of different conquerors and colonization of different planets and civilizations that cause a lot of tension for some of our main characters in this book and in other books, and is brought up pretty frequently. So the Wayfarer is going on a 1-year-long journey to this other solar system because the Galactic Commons, which is kind of like the UN, I guess, for lack of a better comparison, of the galaxy, has finally come to some sort of peace treaty with the Quaylin, and the Wayfarers' job is to kind of connect a interstellar highway to their planet, and so that they can start opening up negotiations and other peace deals. What makes me love this series so much is that it's constantly making connections to larger social issues that we currently face here in the 21st century, and that are sometimes addressed but are more currently coming to light, or maybe things that we do not allow ourselves to think about. And there are these situations in which we're really given a chance to reflect, and it's kind of dependent on whether it is something that is within your scope of knowledge to build connections to, because she's not making direct references to current events. However, there are very easy moments in which they can cross over. So just a few examples of some things and themes that Chambers mentions throughout her stories is challenging our modern understandings of parenthood, what masculinity and femininity means in the future of the home, themes on immigration, themes on religion, themes on LGBTQIA+ diversity, themes on mutual respect in regards to ethical practices within the medicinal field, but also in regards to respecting another person's decisions and how they live their life. The importance of revisiting historical events in order to not perpetuate the traumas and genocides that have led us to where we are now. Themes of the aftermath and consequences of colonization, both on the colonizer and the colonized, while actually simultaneously raising ethical questions as to what is the role of war and why do sapient beings seem to continue. In this case, I can say sapient beings because we have so many different alien species involved. Why does war seem to be a major factor in the progression of a civilization? And is that a necessity? What makes this series of books, and especially The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, so different from any other sci-fi that I've read is that it is very much a utopian sci-fi. Most science fiction tends to lean towards the dystopian. I've also really never read a plotless science fiction before, and I don't mean that in 100% of the term, because like I told you just a minute ago, there is somewhat of a plot, but the plot is not the main focus of the story. The plot is probably, I'd say, within the first about 10% and maybe the last 10 to 15% of the book, but the entire in-between is us following their year-long journey, their interactions with each other, and how they build different relationships throughout all of their different backgrounds throughout history, and visiting all these different planets, and just the decisions that they make along the way that show their progression towards a more utopian society. On to a few more specific points. I'm making this bookmark in reflection of my favorite scene, or one of my favorite scenes from this story, which is when Kizzy, who is our mechanic on the Wayfarer, has these little robots that follow Kizzy around, and they're kind of like her little assistants. Very similar to Haro in the Gundam universe. If you're a Gundam fan and you love Haro, you might really enjoy Kizzy and Kizzy's little robot friends, because in her spare time when she's not working as a mechanic and the little robots are not helping Kizzy repair the spaceship, she's making these really cute little knit hats. And I just love that so much, because these books really opened up a side of me with a love for robots that I just didn't have before. I found myself really detached from sympathizing with AIs, and if you also struggled with coming to some sort of empathy in relation to humans or just sapient beings having relationships with artificial intelligence, please read these books, because I strongly, highly recommend that this might really change your mind. It really challenges those ethics that might have been kind of pre-programmed into us after watching and reading so many sci-fi about the dangers of AI throughout the past, like, so many decades of science fiction. And Becky Chambers just totally throws that out the window with the sweetest scenes and just so much care. So if you're like me and you didn't have an appreciation for AIs as sentient beings, please do me a favor and read this book and tell me if it changes your mind, because that is where I cried the most. My favorite character throughout this book had to be the crew leader named Ashby, because he was just so caring for his team. He just listened to everything that they had to say, and I think that we might be a little bit used to in consuming science fiction media is this leader that's kind of like, it's my way or the highway, ultimately it's my decision, take what you want, do what you want. And that was totally not the case here, because Ashby very much included his team in all of his decision making, and all of the crew members played a really integral part of the story. There's just so many characters to love, and I'm not going to be able to go through them all in this review, but Ashby stole my heart as the leader of this story, and my heart was also stolen in other ways and cracked in half, because there are so many relationships here that question what it means to feel as a member of society, that there's a certain integral role that you must fulfill to make sure that you've completed your duties to your civilization, and that is questioned in many different lenses, whether it be from parenthood to found family, to from the lens of being a child, or from being someone from a certain place of privilege. Also, I want to make note of the beautiful relationships regarding polyamorism, and just how everyone is very open-minded, because each of our characters, we do get a lot of backstory on them, and some of them are drastically different, but at almost no time is anyone really judging anyone else and saying, hey, your culture and your customs are completely opposite of mine, and that is just a deal breaker. Like, no. Everyone is super accepting that each character is coming from a different civilization that has different origins, different customs, different history, different traumas, and is actually looking for a way to kind of, I don't want to say assimilate, but just coexist on a equal playing field in which they can still respect their culture's heritage, but still be open enough to bring in those who are willing. So I definitely recommend this book to anyone who's just maybe has been really hesitant to start becoming a sci-fi reader, and you just don't know where to start, or maybe dystopian is just not your thing, maybe dark fantasy is not your thing, or just darker topics in general are not your jam. This is a really bright corner of the science fiction realm that I think you should read. And even anyone who's just looking for something really wholesome, I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. And I cannot wait to get you my review of the second book in this series, A Closed and Common Orbit, because that is so far my favorite book of 2021 at the point of recording this. So that is all I'm going to say, because I do want to keep this a spoiler-free review. I hope that you like this bookmark that I made. I tried to keep it really simple and sweet. I don't know if the robots actually had faces in the book, but this is kind of like my interpretation of them wearing Kizzy's oversized little knitted hats, because they were supposed to be really small robots that kind of just buzzed around and helped her do her work. So I post videos every week. I also have affiliate links down in my description below. If you'd like to read more sci-fi with me, I do host the Interstellar book club, which meets once a month to talk about different book club picks, and this was the book club pick for one of the months. The links to our Discord, Twitter, and all of the other co-hosts are in the description below. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for hanging out with me. Bye!
What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka worked the